Wow, it's been an interesting first couple days with my new camera. Today is day 2, and I didn't take any photographs today because last night I found something that it kind of was concerning, and I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And getting to the bottom of this took quite a bit of time. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So when I was fiddling around with this, and let me just take these lenses off and I'll show you what I mean. What I noticed when I was fiddling around with this is I would set the shutter to something ridiculously long, like 2 seconds, or 1 second, and it was a surprisingly long 1 second or 2 seconds. And I started trying to measure it with a stopwatch, and it was just seeming longer than it should be. And so I took a little video of it, and I could see that for a 1 second exposure, it was over 1 second. It was clearly open for well over a second. And something was going wrong. I needed to actually understand what was happening with this. And there I went down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out, how do I test the shutter speed accuracy of this camera? And I was thinking of multiple ideas. For example, I was planning on taking my X100, setting them side by side, and using my GoPro in slow motion and filming both of them and having them open their shutters. Of course, it wouldn't be at the same time, but close enough. But I could then line the clips up, and I could see the leaf shutters opening. Turns out that there's some Fuji magic in here where you don't actually see the leaf shutter opening and closing. I think there might be 2 layers or something. You just don't see a very clear, defined open and close. There went that idea. And I thought about, well, I'll use the iPhone, which comes with a slow motion camera. You're supposed to be able to get this 240 frames per second kind of slow-mo. And I did it. And in fact, I'll show you an example of what it looked like. The problem is it turns out that you can't absolutely guarantee you're going to get 240 frames a second. It seems like they interpolate or they do something. And when I did film of a stopwatch and I counted the frames and tried to just figure out how to go frame by frame, that's an exercise in itself. I had to go into QuickTime on my Mac, and I'm hitting the arrow key 1, 2, 3, 1, just going through all the frames. There's no good frame counter. This is not something that the computer was really intended to be used for. You bring it into something like Final Cut Pro, and all of a sudden the video is converted. And this was a rabbit hole I didn't expect was going to be such a challenge. And it turns out that the only thing that worked was my trusty GoPro. Hey, it's me from 3 days later. And I was talking with a friend yesterday at work, and we were chatting about the problem of measuring the shutter speed. And we were just thinking, oh man, it would be so easy to make something with an Arduino and use a photo transistor. And we're talking about the software, we're talking about the problem of, the light, when it comes through the shutter, it's going to be like a ramp up, and it's going to be a ramp down. It's not going to be a real fast, it's not going to be a square wave. You're going to had this thing all sorted out. And I got home from work and I'm thinking, this sounds too easy. Somebody else must have done it. And I Googled it up, and sure enough, this is yesterday's news. People have been doing this for quite some time. You can buy them. There's even an Instructable telling you how to make one of these devices. With that said, I don't have any of that stuff. I do have a GoPro, and there's an expression in Brazil where they say, if you don't have a dog, you hunt with a cat. And I've got a cat. It's time to go hunting. It was my trusty GoPro. I put this thing in slow-mo, which gives you precisely 240 frames per second. And I took the video that I captured and I opened that on my Mac without any processing, and I opened it in QuickTime. And it opens it in a funny kind of a slow-mo mode where you've got this little magnified section of the video, of the timeline, and you can step through it by hitting the arrow key. And that was the only way. And you can't even trust the frame counter that it shows because that's interpolated. What you have to do is go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what I did just to make sure it was being honest is in my videos, I put a stopwatch right next to it. And so I would make sure that every tick of the stopwatch was something like 48 frames because the stopwatch does 5 ticks per second. And when I was doing the slower shutter speeds, I would make sure that the stopwatch actually matched the shutter and things like that. And at the end of the day, it turns out, after taking copious notes on the back of an envelope and doing the calculations, it turns out that my camera, the shutter is 1/2 of a stop slow. A full stop means something is double. It would take twice as long. A half stop means instead of multiplying it by 2 to the first power, you're multiplying it by 2 to the 1/2 power, which is square root of 2. So in shutter speeds, a half stop is going to be 1.414 times whatever you're trying to increase by half stop. And that's more or less what my shutter is doing. It's about 1.4 times the time that it really should be. No big deal. All I have to do is adjust my exposure accordingly. This means I've got to do a lot of experimentation and take lots of notes in my notebook and make sure that I understand my camera. This is really an amazing process. It underscores that this is a mechanical device with its issues and its nuances, and it's not the same as a digital process. This is an analog process, and so you kind of got to get a feel for what your particular camera is like. And this camera is close to 60 years old. It's not going to act like it did the day it came out of the factory. Who knows, maybe that half a stop will have saved me on some of those underexposed pictures that I took yesterday. We'll see what happens. But the saga continues, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. Thank you for watching.